Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another weekend workshop. We're so glad that you are joining us today, and I know there will be a few more joining us as well before this workshop is through. Happy Earth Month. We're in the middle of April right now, of course, and many know that in our communities there are some amazing earth-friendly activities happening, which if you speak to people like Ange and others who are closest to issues, you'll know that every day needs to be Earth Day. But here we are with our focus on it specifically today. And so this is a great opportunity to talk about shifting our small businesses to really embrace more sustainable operations. So for those I haven't met before, my name is Carrie. I'm the project manager for the We Can project, which is led by Queen's University. And while we're getting started, I know not everyone's on the call yet, but feel free to introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat. Let us know what your business is, perhaps also where you're connecting from. Drop a link if you'd like to let us know how we can get in touch with you. And while you're doing that, I'll take a moment to acknowledge that Queen's University is situated on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples. And of course, as we mentioned, today we are looking at sustainable business practices. And the more that I've come to speak with Indigenous elders and get to know Indigenous philosophies and approaches to life, the more that we realize this concept of the dish with one spoon has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so the idea that there is only one dish and we are all sharing the same spoon comes from, a long, long line of Indigenous teachings. And so I'm hoping that as we are really talking about this topic today, we'll embrace this idea of putting people and the planet before profit. And I know that that's certainly at the heart of the work that Ange does at Harlowe Green on a regular basis. And so we're excited to have her joining us here today. Again, if you're just joining us, feel free to let us know in the Zoom chat what your business is and perhaps where you're connecting from as we're getting started. But I know you've got a lot of great material to cover here, Ange, and I know that it's completely applicable to small businesses since you yourself are a small business owner in the heart of Kingston. So I'm going to hand you the virtual microphone. Ange, thank you so much for joining us. It's so great to have you with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I am in the throes of strep throat, so I think I will be fine to chat through everything. But there is the chance I may need to take a break. So if I do, I'll just pause or mute for a moment. But let's get started. So I thought I would introduce my business a little bit, myself, and kind of give a background of where I'm coming from so you have a sense of what my perspective is in approaching this. And I'll just start with myself. My name's Ange, and I'm a mom. So I'm very focused on what things look like for the future for my boys. And I grew up on a farm, so I would say I've always been connected to nature, and went to the University of Guelph and studied environment and resources there. So although I had those experiences growing up on a farm and going to Guelph, which is a very agriculturally focused school, I still didn't have a good grasp or sense of how I could do things differently as an individual. And this was in 2009 when I left school. So learning about environment and resources at the time, we were doing a lot of discussing about climate change, and a lot of the predictions that were being made at that time were 10 or 15 years out. So it's really interesting to see how a lot of those predictions, for example, increasing wildfire activity in Canada and sea level rises in certain areas of the world, more extreme weather, how it was very on par with what they were saying at the time. And although I was worried, I would say I didn't have a strong handle on what I could actually do as an individual. Fast forward a few years, I was a teacher for a little while, and then I was a small business operations manager for almost 4 years at a local small business. And I have been a small business owner for almost the last 4 years. So I have an eye, I guess, looking at it from a sustainable point of view, but then also looking at things from maybe more of a procedure based small business point of view as well. And Harlowe Green really started during the first lockdown. I was living a refill lifestyle, and my job at the time had me traveling to Ottawa, and my family lives in Lindsay. So I was doing this refill thing. I'd made all this progress, just slowly working away at different things. But then, if you remember, during the first lockdown, that all kind of ground to a halt. Going into a city was a scary thing. Even going to a grocery store was nerve-wracking, and I didn't really want to leave behind everything that I'd worked on. So I had been talking about simple ways to be more sustainable just on my personal social media, and I knew enough people to try to start a refillery. And I just did this out of my mudroom, and now in 4 years we have grown. If you can see behind me, I'm sitting in my home shop. It's in our basement, so we have this little rural hub for people where they can come and refill, as well as a pretty intense delivery program that we do with electric vehicle, of refill goods in like a mason jar or paper bags. So we've eliminated single-use plastics, but then also tried to keep it convenient for people. And then downtown Kingston, we have a refillery on Brock Street. So in the last couple of years, I've gotten more into speaking about things. I have a couple of webinars. If you're curious, you can hop on our website. They're more tailored to the individual lifestyle. This chat will be more specifically focused on small business operations. But I have also started doing some consulting and helping people write policy for different organizations and give them some advice in looking at some of their own operations. So it's evolving and it's very exciting, and I'm really happy to be here today. I'm really excited that Carrie was interested in entertaining this chat. So I put a few places where you can find us. I will also follow up with that at the beginning or at the ending of the presentation. And then, Carrie, did you have an opportunity to share the PDF with everyone?
No, but I will.
Okay, so I created a PDF of the presentation. So hopefully, I'm a big note taker. So hopefully you can just absorb the content while we're chatting about it. And then I've left any of the examples off. So know that that is coming at the end as well. And I created a list of questions so that hopefully you can do some investigation into your own operations if that's where you're keen. So I thought I would just go over what we'll chat about today. Firstly, I want to talk about some key sustainability elements, and that can hopefully help create a lens that we can look at different decisions that we're making because we're all coming from different contexts. And really, to become any sort of environmentalist in our own lives or an advocate for the climate or the earth, then we just need to do where it fits for us. It doesn't have to be perfect across the board. It doesn't have to look like everyone else. And we're all coming from different business backgrounds and offerings. So hopefully understanding some of these overarching concepts can help us just approach different decisions that we'll be making. And then I thought I would shift it over into the lens of sustainable business operations on how to adopt some of these elements, some examples of different businesses. And then I had a few additional considerations just for implementing any changes you want to do. So we will have 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to go through some questions, maybe a little bit more than that. This is the second time I've presented this, so hopefully it just sort of rolls smoother. And you can ask questions then. However, Carrie is also going to let me know if there is a question that sort of fits in with the presentation as it's happening, and we can answer it then. So ask questions in the chat, and I can work on answering them throughout, or we can hold them until the end if it's something that's sort of coming next. So I think I missed. Okay, here. I wanted to firstly address this elephant that's in the room. I think that, especially right now, this conversation is unique in that shifting to more sustainable operations in our individual lives or in our businesses really can look more expensive. At first glance, it seems that this is going to be an undertaking of cost of some sort. And it's not really at a convenient time to be able to do this. So our consumers are experiencing a cash flow crunch. Small businesses are also experiencing this. We are in a challenging time as small business owners to really think about trying to do things that are more expensive. So I've found some quotes I really like. I have a couple of websites that have some great consumer index pieces of data that we can look at in understanding where our consumers are at. But sustainability is starting to potentially be seen as a luxury or something that people can worry about when their costs are covered. So it's kind of a future date thing. And we have seen that falling since 2020. And that makes sense with the climate that we're in. So if you're sitting down and you're trying to make some decisions that are more sustainable, you may think, I really don't see the benefit of doing this. It is just going to decrease my profit margin. That's the lens that I'm going into with this. However, something that we can't really quantify in the same way, I think I have this backwards, is the potential cost of failing to do so. So while we can sit down and look at, hey, shifting my packaging is going to cost me this much more money, that's really easy to quantify. However, looking at the potential cost of failing to make some of these changes, that's much more challenging to quantify. So just to begin the conversation, I thought I would give a couple of examples, but we are finding that the poor or irresponsible environmental practices are some of the main reasons that cause a customer to turn their back on a company's products for good. And you may think, well, then why is Amazon so successful, or companies like Shein? And that's true. We have different customers, different demographics that we're all approaching our small business sort of lens with. However, we are finding more and more consumers are still making decisions based on that. So if they have the choice, and I know that I would be maybe not the best example of the general consumer because I'm presenting about sustainability today, but it absolutely impacts where I will be purchasing something from. So I thought I would give an example to start. My family was at Women's Art Fest last summer, and we went to the food truck section. We were having a great day, and there was a wood-fired pizza company there, and that is absolutely, I'm not even going to look around if there's a wood-fired pizza option. I will just go and get my lunch there. I know it will be good. However, when I lined up, I saw that they had styrofoam plates, and that shifted my choice because I had another choice. I could go to another place, and my mindset is shifting. And I think we are seeing that more and more, especially for younger demographic. They will notice these pieces of your business, and it will be enough for them to either stop consuming, stop coming to your business for a service. And you might not know about that. You may not know about the loss, and you may just decide that it's just the recession. However, more and more people are making decisions based on this. So we can do some things that are not going to cost us those customers, and do the things that maybe have the most impact to begin with. And hopefully sort of keep the people that are shifting their habits, that are shifting these things in their daily lives, and consuming at our businesses. So just for example, a lot of the people that come into the refillery, we have conversations about this, and they're absolutely asking, where can I go fill up my coffee cup? What business is using packaging so that if I get takeout, I can just shift to a business where I can feel good about my purchase? So they're looking for the independent owned, they're looking for the better packaging, they're looking for better practices, and we have these conversations frequently. So being part of the group that these customers are looking for, they will find that place and likely just continue going to that place because they don't have to do that research up front any longer. So to get started, understanding some elements of sustainability, and these can apply in your individual life or in your business decision making. And I've kind of separated it into understanding sort of like an immediate choice with a product. So we are all purchasing different products frequently for our businesses, or maybe it's a one-time purchase. And then we're also we can look at sustainability in terms of the process. So looking at more of like a concept or a service that we offer and how we can make that more sustainable. So the first element I want to touch on is an adaptation of Maslow's hierarchy of need. And this is called the hierarchy of need. And essentially what it means is we're supposed to be doing the things at the bottom here of the triangle the most, and the thing at the top of the triangle the least. So buying new or consuming something brand new that is using brand new resources is sort of the last resort. So if we're looking at things in terms of small business, this just makes sense. It's just scrappy money saving advice anyways, to rent something or borrow something from another business or someone that you know. If you're having, for example, an event and you are not going to use it long term, it makes sense to just borrow it anyway. However, if you are upcycling things, if you start your decision making at looking what you already have and trying to use that up first, that's actually the most sustainable thing you can do, rather than just buying a whole bunch of brand new stuff that is eco-friendly. So that's sort of my first message to put out there, is to use what you have, hit up Marketplace. All of those things are more sustainable and definitely going to save you money. But that lens kind of is going to permeate a lot of the things that we're chatting about next. And then the second concept I wanted to go over is in explaining the difference between eco-friendly and sustainability. So this is confusing. It has really boomed as an opportunity for marketers or advertising to make things look better for a specific demographic. And there's definitely been a period of greenwashing, which is making things seem better than they are so that they can sell more things. That has occurred. However, I feel that we are coming out the wave on the other side of it, where people are more aware of this eco-friendly sort of greenwashing, green leaf on the same product, and maybe only one ingredient has actually changed, type of approach. So consumers are becoming more aware of this, but in understanding what makes something sustainable, it can help us actually gauge whether we are being marketed to, whether something actually truly is sustainable. It makes it easier for you to stand behind your decision and know if what you've chosen is the right one, and that you're not going to just have the same sort of negative feedback as if you pick something that was eco-friendly and sort of not all the way there. So I picked a couple of examples to go through, but essentially eco-friendly, it's not a regulated term. Really, sustainability isn't either, but it basically just means not the worst thing. So we can see this in larger companies like Tide or Dove. They will have one product, their traditional product, and then they will have something that's changed colors a little bit. It probably has some green writing on it, and it will be marketing towards the demographic of people that are looking to be choosing better. So they can make it cost more money, but maybe only, as I mentioned, an ingredient has changed, and it's just not as bad as the original thing. So I picked produce bags to kind of show this. We have on one hand sort of the conventional, just the plastic bag that everybody grabs, fills up some produce and throws it out, or tries to recycle it maybe a week later. So an eco-friendly version of this would be a reusable plastic bag. And this is also seen in how grocery stores have shifted from plastic bags to just a little bit more durable plastic bag. And in terms of sustainability, we need to look at the whole cycle of things. So where did this come from? How was it made? Consider some things during use, and then sort of the end of its life, the death of the product. So if we look at the first two options, the plastic bag with the peaches there, Its birth, it was created from fossil fuel mining and plastics processing, so petrochemicals that have been mined in the earth, extracted, and then processed into this plastic. So that's a very intensive process, and sustainability essentially means it's something it could go on and on and on without a breakdown in the system. And in this case, mining into the earth to get these fossil fuels that are of a limited amount, and then the incredible impacts that exist with creating plastics, that's not something that could go on forever. There will be a breakdown in that system. And then when we look at the use, has a very short-term use, and these cheaper plastics are creating situations where they're sitting on the food, and now we're seeing that humans are having these microplastics built up in their bodies from their food's exposure to these cheap plastics. So in bags like that or saran wrap. So that's not something that can go on forever either, because it is building up in the environment and in our bodies. And then with the death, only 9% of the world's plastic has ever been recycled. So if we were looking at it from a business standpoint, anything that only has a 9% success rate, we are going to abandon that very quickly. That is not sustainable for us. It is not something that we would ever wish to continue. And we're starting to see the impact of that small percentage of being recycled and then the huge amount that is not recycled. So it is beginning to build up in the environment, takes centuries to break down. So this, when we look at it from a whole cycle point of view, doesn't look great, but that's our worst option. If we look at the bags in the middle, the reusable polyester bags, these are the ones that you most commonly see in the grocery store. They are usually green, just like the ones in the pictures there. That's just signaling to people that it is a green option. And sometimes they're even made of recycled plastic, which also is signaling that this is an eco-friendly product. The eco-friendly aspect of it is that it can be used more than once. But when we look at the whole cycle there, the birth of it is still the same. It is still using that plastic extraction, the fossil fuel process that is happening there that isn't sustainable. The use, you're still putting your foods into that plastic. It's not a sustainable or long-term plan. And then the death, this produce bag, if you get a tear in it or the drawstring comes out, is not something that you are going to repair. It just is not worth it. It was so cheap that you will throw it out. And there's not even a 9% recycling option there for those bags. So it's a little bit better, but this is not a sustainable solution by any means. Then if we look at the produce bags on the other side, I tried to show like a cloth. So if we were choosing something like a natural cloth that hasn't been dyed, or even just looking in our basement and finding some fabric or the thrift store or your mom's closet, and you have a bunch of fabric that is essentially not doing anything, and you make those bags out of it, then that process looks a lot different than the fossil fuel mining. And then during use, you are not having these plastics being exposed to your food. You can wash those bags and you don't have any sort of plastic fibers going out into the water. And then at the end of its life, you may even repair it. If you worked on making these bags, that's a free way to do it. If you're using something you already have, you may decide to actually repair it and extend its life. And cloth will just naturally last longer than the cheaper plastic. This could essentially degrade back to the earth. And that's especially true if you're using something that is like an undyed or like an organic fiber. So that actually is a system that could go on long term. We're choosing a little bit better at the beginning, but we're sort of looking at the beginning and the ending and the use. And the more that you do this, the easier it will become. So I'm going to go through this one a little bit faster, but I tried to pick something that will probably sort of exist in a lot of our business contexts, not be cleaning windows. So I use an example here of the conventional Windex and paper towel. So if we take that through the cycle, the creation and the birth, we have still that plastic processing, and then we have some chemical production that has to happen there for the ammonia and like the blue dye, for example, that's in Windex and all the ingredients that make it up. And then we're also looking at the paper towel creation or birth of the product. And while we're using a renewable resource, we're definitely not making trees as fast as we use the paper towels. And then paper processing has a lot of bleach added to it. And it really does have a short lifespan for the actual level of processing that has to happen. When we look at the life of this, we have the chemicals entering our environment. It's not really safe for the humans that are breathing them in when they're using it. And then the end of life, which we reach quickly for the plastics and the paper towel. That paper towel has ammonia and any of the other chemicals that are involved with your cleaning product going into the environment. So the paper towel can degrade, but it has a lot of other things on it. And then we have that plastic bottle, and then wherever you've sprayed that Windex, those chemicals are still existing and they have a breakdown rate as well. So by any means, this is not the sustainable option, but we're aware of that, but it's just helping us to look at the full lifespan. And then if we wanted to look at a more eco-friendly option, we could consider something like Norwex. That's where you have the microfiber cleaning cloths. You don't use chemicals, you just use water. So looking at the birth of the product, we've eliminated all of those chemicals from this system, and that is great. We have this reusable cloth. However, when we look at this from a sustainable point of view, from like the beginning, middle, end, we see a plastic cloth again. So this plastic processing that happens in its lifetime, it is extracting a ton of little microfiber plastic waste in your environment. Every time it's washed, it's sending microfiber plastics into our water system. Then at the end of the life, there is no plan for this. It's just plastic waste. So it can last a lot longer, but the whole system here is designed around plastics and systems where it's not going to return to the earth, and it's had this impact in its lifespan. So we've eliminated chemicals, but we really haven't eliminated all of the impacts. And then really, I would say if you're looking for something sustainable, I have found that if you think back 150 years to what people were doing before there were dumps, before there was access to really cheap processing of everything and all these convenience measures, you're going to find your most sustainable option. And in our shop and in my life, we use vinegar and water, and we can keep filling up our own container. If you really get into this, you can make your own vinegar at home with apples and sugar. It's very simple to do. So you don't actually have any chemicals in the process. And then you can either use rags. My grandparents love to use newspaper. So reusing something that already exists, and then you can wash those rags. So if you're using something like your old tea towels from your kitchen, then they're probably cotton and you can wash them and they're not having all these impacts. So this is something that could continue for centuries and not have a breakdown in the system for human health or the environment. So if we're asking ourselves if something is healthy for the environment, it will be healthy for humans, most likely. If something's not healthy for a human to be doing, then it also is a really easy way to kind of look at it and say, this also just can't be good for the earth either. And then for a concept, I thought I would quickly chat about fast fashion because it's not necessarily just a product. But in conventional fast fashion, if we look at that, that would be like an Old Navy or a Joe Fresh product. It's being made on the other side of the world. It's using a lot of plastic fiber, so nylons, polyesters, so a lot of that fossil fuel extraction to make these garments. And life cycle, it's not meant to last very long. I don't think anybody buys something fast fashion based considering that they will have it in 10 years. And at the end of its life, we can donate it, but that garment is not going to last much longer. And it certainly can't break down if it is made of plastic. There's no recycling for it. So there is a huge buildup that we're seeing now of garments in third world countries that are being sent by Western countries. So we can shift to things like a recycled fiber, or we're seeing a lot of recycled plastic fabrics. This is better, but if you're still consuming at really high rates, it's not really something that can last long term. So thrifting things, using what already exists, shopping for vintage items that used to be only 20 years ago made in Canada and were a better quality and will last because they've already lasted 20 years. That's really sustainable, but also shows a cost savings there too for someone. So there's a list over on the left-hand side there of some questions that can kind of help you dive into the birth, use, and death of something. And those questions can kind of help you suss things out of whether it is sustainable or if it's just eco-friendly. And you can look at these questions, and if you don't know, the information is not that hard to find anymore, and it doesn't take very long. Like, this is looking like a ton of research. So another point that I'm going to touch on is how to slow this down so that you can actually just take this one step at a time. But it's going to pull in other elements that I'll show you. We have data for that shows that people actually care more about some of these social pieces than the eco-friendly piece. And there are a lot of people that are concerned about the environment right now. So when you're pulling
Ange,
in,
sorry. Can I
oh,
just slide in with a quick question from the Zoom chat? And I'm not sure if you were just talking about the cloth. So I just wanted, before we moved on, to go to that. Muriel's asking, do recycled plastic or does recycled plastic clothing pose risk to humans versus on their skin almost as much as food stored in plastic?
so recycled plastic is wearing plastics on our skin. We actually don't know what the impact of that is yet. It's something as a parent that I'm just trying to avoid for our family just because there isn't enough data showing what the impact of that is, of how many humans are now wearing plastic clothing. And the interesting thing is there are a lot more women wearing plastics than men. So if you go and you look in any clothing store, the men's pants are all made of 100% cotton, where women are mostly wearing a lot of polyester office wear. A lot of like active wear has become really popular that is petrochemical based. So women are wearing a lot more of it, especially for underwear right beside like reproductive regions. So it's something that I think we will see the impact of or research to come in the future. For me, I don't see recycled plastic fabric as being a great sustainable option, mostly because every time you recycle old plastic, you have to add new plastic to it. So you're really not ending a cycle there. And then there still isn't an endpoint for that recycled plastic item. So if you're looking for some exercise shorts or a bathing suit, something that you think like, I have to have a plastic version of this, it's still a better option, but I personally don't see it as a sustainable option. And I do think that we will find in the future some sort of information of how it's impacting our bodies, but it's only been in the last couple of years that we're starting to see research on microplastics in the human body. So it's now been shown in placenta, in our blood, it's crossed the blood-brain barrier. So the main source that is being found is with food. So if you want to shift something, that's a great place to start. Just trying to buy produce in cloth or just package free is a great place. And then storing food differently. So even just reusing like a spaghetti jar to store your leftovers in rather than something just wrapped in saran wrap. But I don't really have a clear answer for that. But
It's awesome. Thank you. That helps a lot.
yeah, it's an eco option, not a sustainable option, I guess. So, anyways, when you're getting into sort of the thick of trying to decide if something's sustainable, and this is how I have found so many people's journeys into things that are more eco-friendly, you can't just do it for the environment. It pulls in all of these other sort of inequalities, and it's all good work. So I'm going to advocate for trying to go slowly so that you can really decide if something's sustainable. And it definitely gets easier to make the decisions as time goes, especially as we make so many decisions in our business, in our daily lives. So here's the data. We have 29% of the population, 2024 statistics, so this would be 2023 information, that are placing importance on the environmental pieces. However, we have higher percentages of the population that are also looking for those social factors. So you can say something was made sustainably, or you can say something was made in Canada. And that has a lot more weight for understanding whether there were some standards put in place for the workplace. It's not being, people are getting paid a fair wage, for example. If it's made in Canada, you're pulling in a larger group of people that would be interested in your product, but that's just naturally going to be better for the environment anyways, because there's some sort of standard that's been placed on it. So if you are able to get into sort of the sustainability behind things, you're also going to be pulling some of these other social factors that are going to broaden the amount of people that are interested in making these shifts. And then another interesting thing is when a consumer understands if something is locally made or has been made in Canada, they are more interested in paying more money for it. And this we can see just for maple syrup. So maple syrup, a true maple syrup, is a lot more expensive than a conventional factory-made syrup, but people understand the difference and they are more interested in paying more for that locally sourced good. And if you're choosing things that are local, that's just a lower carbon footprint in general. And this also pulls in those social factors. And 60% are saying they want to support their local economy. So if you can make a decision, if you have the buying power to make a decision, you're probably looking for things that are local. That's naturally going to be more environmentally friendly in almost every case. So just to wrap that piece up there, expect decision making to evolve. It's not a perfect thing by any means in your own life or in your business life. And I thought I would give a couple of examples of ways that you can sort of step this. And we see that with larger businesses and corporations. If we ever see some type of sustainability plan, they are not doing it all immediately. They will say, by this point, we will have this area cleaned up. By this point, this percentage of whatever is going to be cleaned up. So it's okay for you to also adopt that mindset in your own life and in your business. And it's not going to be perfect. There are no perfect solutions for every single situation. I thought I would share a couple of examples in how this is imperfect and how your consumer, in understanding that you are struggling with these things or talking about it, which I'm also going to advocate that you do, um, really helped them to see sort of where I'm at, because if somebody's working on these things in their own individual life, they're already going to appreciate that it's a difficult process. So I have a picture on the left there, that's of our shop, and we are renting the space. And we needed to fix our floor. We had laminate on the floor. It was separated. We have an old building. So in the winter, it would fill up with salt in the gaps between the laminate flooring. And in the summer, it would squeeze together and cause huge humps in the floor that we then had to drill down. So we had to take the laminate out, and we could have made the choice to just put down another cheap laminate flooring, which would just, we would have the same problems, and somebody else would be replacing it and throwing it away and causing this bigger impact. And instead I painted the floor, and we weren't able to use a linseed oil paint or something that was eco-friendly because it needed to be durable for us to be able to wash it. And on one hand, I have a really significant impact if I go with laminate. I have the middle impact if I decided to paint it. And then I have the expensive one that is just completely off the table. But I talked about that with my customers, and I posted that on social media and said, like, it's absolutely fine to not have this all figured out. But in trying to make these decisions and making it transparent, you will gain a lot of traction and having people understand that you are going through the same issues that they are. And I am at the point in my journey that if I get some weird packaging, I have a mailer package in the middle there. I always email that company if I really like them and say, hey, this time you sent my stuff in a whole bunch of plastic packaging, and I just want you to know that will impact me in my future purchases from your company. And will frequently have companies say, like, well, it's just too expensive for us. And so they've just shown that they're not really concerned about that. So they're not going to shift that. And that's when I go to try and find another place to source that item. But I had one company say, we've just taken over this company and we are absolutely committed to shifting our packaging, but we're using up what exists first. And we know that's not perfect, but we are doing our best to do things in a sustainable fashion. And that was the very best answer that they could have given, because it showed that they truly understand sustainability and trying to use up what already exists. So if that's your reason for doing things other than it's just the lowest cost, your customers will definitely, if they are on this shift in their own lives, understand and appreciate that. So it's not going to be perfect, and it's okay to acknowledge that. And I think the more we talk about it, the more you will be able to gain traction with your move towards being more sustainable. So now talking about some operations changes. I think that a lot of people look at shifting to more sustainable options in their lives or in their businesses. They're looking at it as, I can just like figure out what I need to get and then I'm not going to think about it again. It really is never going to work that way. More options are going to become available in the future. And in our own lives, if we look at like a timeline of this, the starting point is always, we've never considered this. We've never walked into our bathrooms and really paid attention to how much plastic is in there. In our society, we have a high consumption rate, and sometimes we're not even in control of the consumption that we have. It's really high convenience living and high waste output. So there is a period of work that has to happen in looking at it, finding solutions, and then an endpoint where you're just continuously maybe adapting, but you've looked at things and you know what kind of works best for your business. So there's two different ways to design changes, and I'm going to advocate trying to do one of each at the same time, but it's important to know sort of where you're at and what you're able to take on. I know sometimes with different seasons of life and different seasons of business, I have bigger capacity to be able to approach some of the more challenging habit type changes versus just a quick, I've just made a different decision, I'm just sourcing something differently. So I think I'm going to approach this as, if you can do both of these at the same time, you will not cost yourself more money. But at some point, the simple switch is going to be easier than a general like procedure or habit change. So I tried to use like a really basic example of a simple swap. So if you are in the tourism industry or you have a restaurant and you are providing takeaway coffee, for example, maybe you're just looking at shifting away from a styrofoam cup and you need to find something that is compostable, and you just figure out which one is closest or makes the most sense. You need to find that, you find it, and it's done. You have plastic stir sticks, you're going to switch them for a popsicle stick. It's very easy to shift because you're not asking anybody to really do anything different. They don't have to learn how to use a stir stick differently. It's just a switch that can happen quickly. However, these things usually cost more money to make that type of a change. On the other hand, you can have lifestyle or habit changes. These are behavior shifts. So it can require maybe a learned behavior that you need to kind of unlearn and then a new one. These can be tougher, but as customers are doing this in their own lives, if you're just able to support it, it really isn't going to cost you more money. So if you're offering this coffee and you allow customers to bring their own cup, this is them changing their behavior, and you just need to have a policy put in place or some training with your staff to allow them to bring their own cup. So explaining to them that the person holds onto their lid, you only touch their cup, you don't touch it on X, Y, or Z on the coffee maker, and we can make this work. So this actually saves you money because you aren't buying those coffee cups anymore, and you're supporting the customer and their behavior change. Another thing that you could do that saves you even more money is having mugs in place, and then the people that are sitting and maybe haven't made their own behavior change yet to having a reusable mug that they bring around with them. All you need to do is the whole background piece. So the process is more complicated than just shifting to a compostable cup. Now you have to have a place for those mugs to go. You have to get some mugs, and you have to train your staff or have some sort of plan there for washing the mugs. So on one hand, one of these types of switches costs you money. The other one is either just supporting, that doesn't cost you any money. And then if you want to take it one step further, it can save you money. So if you can do like a simple switch, like maybe you're going to switch to recycled paper napkins, that could cost you more money, but it could be absorbed by the cost savings of shifting something else. And the upfront work in the simple swap will be more sourcing, shifting pricing, and sort of phasing out your previous offering, but then it's in place. For the lifestyle and habit changes, there are some things that need to be put in place. And again, you need to be aware of what you're capable of implementing and at what time it's easiest to implement those. So for example, if you're a tourism industry, this might be something that you could work on right now if it's a slower, quieter period before you ramp up and have that change before you hire your seasonal staff. So I think I've already mentioned the cost savings. The increased cost of like a swap can be absorbed with a shift. So looking at your procedures and maybe taking on more money in one area, but saving it in another can make it more realistic. And then you can also offer like a cost cutting measure for your consumers. So you're highlighting your values, you're offering an incentive, but it may not actually cost you any more money. So for example, Starbucks reported a 150% increase in the usage of reusable coffee cups when it introduced a small fee for their disposable ones. And we saw that in our store as well. As soon as we said we need to charge 25 cents for a bag, the number of people that were fine to not take a bag, it was markedly noticeable, and that saved money for our business because we were no longer putting out money for bags that were recycled paper and sourced properly. Now that meant that it was going to save the consumer money, so then they just didn't take it. We also have the opportunity for customers to, we've had people ask us if we will take paper bags. So we now have a bin of just free bags, and that doesn't cost us any money, and customers can take those. So it was just setting it up that it can save them money, but we're reusing something that already exists. MAC makeup example, they are offering a packaging return, and they were already offering a freebie, so different types of samples when customers would be in, say, Sephora, but now they'll offer those freebies if you bring back packaging. So the freebie was already a cost that existed for their business, but they connected it with something that is cost cutting for consumers and sustainable. They're probably still packaged in plastic, so I'm not going to say that that's a very sustainable option. But if you can figure out a way that it incentivizes something for consumers, for example, the refillery model, if you return the packaging to refill it again, it definitely saves quite a bit of money. In some cases, it saves almost 35% of the cost of packaging. So having these sort of incentives in place, it doesn't cost me more money. My profit margins do look different for refill versus just a product on the shelf, but it's definitely ideal for consumers. And then creating some local partnerships can also help you highlight the value that you're trying to instill and that you're working towards for your customers, but then it can cut costs for you as well. So, as I mentioned before, consumers are paying attention to that local sourcing. They're willing to pay more if something sourced locally. So, if you're sitting on the fence and you're like, I don't know, this person that is 25 minutes away, it's this amount of money more for their product, be aware that your consumers are paying attention to that sourcing if you're able to communicate it correctly. And an advantage for increasing this, it can also help you solve some operations dilemmas, especially as shipping is becoming so expensive. And that decreases the carbon footprint of a shipment. So if you're sourcing something from the other side of Canada, still maybe in Canada, the product itself may be a little bit cheaper for your customers, but if you're able to get it locally, you're decreasing your carbon footprint, you're bringing in the whole concept of creating a better local economy. You have a face for customers to understand where this is coming from, maybe even how it's made. That's also going to decrease the shipping costs for you. So it's definitely worth looking into. And then if you're working with a local brand, I would also say that they are more interested in trying to figure out how to make things work. So it can help you solve additional problems. So I have a few examples that I want to go through. The Smith Hotel, this is a completely free way if you want to try and create some local partnerships, but the Smith Hotel has done an incredible job of doing this. They're highlighting some of their values without actually spending any money. So if you go onto the Smith Hotel's Instagram, there's a shop local button there, and this helps draw customers that are interested in more of a local experience and coming to see Kingston versus going to the Holiday Inn. If they click on that, they'll see like our refillery, they'll see Montreal Street Collective. So they're highlighting that they are um, interested in supporting more sustainable businesses. And then on their website, they've created some partnerships with some other local businesses. So this specifically isn't a way to become more sustainable, but it's a great way in trying to highlight how you can find businesses that are local to be able to create those partnerships. And I'll give a couple of examples of businesses that have partnered with us and how this has solved some problems for them. So on the left, we have Cabinscape. I worked with them to design like a refillery model, and we did some labels together for things. So they're highlighting that they've connected with our refillery and that things are refillable. And a lot of their cabins, if you're not familiar with the company, are off grid and they are in random locations that are also in my area. And I offer the free electric delivery. So they were able to solve a logistical problem, but then also create more sustainability in their operations and source things in a local fashion. So really, it's just a ton of wins all the way around. It's a creative solution to potentially a problem that they were having in trying to get their supplies out to all of these little cabins, which was solved by a small business. And then in the middle there's another example of a business that is highlighting, I think both of those actually, that was on Earth Day. They are explaining how they have refillable local partnerships and it's sustainable, and it's highlighting to the guests that are coming to use their tourism venues that they're sourcing in a better way and that they don't have this single-use plastic. And for a consumer looking at that, you're going to pull people in that are looking for that type of an experience. So I thought I would mention some local solutions that have benefited my business. It's already part of my business values, but in a couple of different ways, I've been able to have some operational things solved for me as well. So I can experience some faster turnaround time when things are close by me, when I'm using a smaller business. And this is a lot simpler for restocking, and they customize things for our business and really need that because we are trying to offer things that are package free and compostable, or the ingredients make sense. So it can be very difficult for me to source things that are really the best collection of all the things that we're trying to do, and it can be imperfect, and as soon as we're able to find something that is closer to us, that's what we shift to. But in this way, I've been able to solve some problems. So Old Country Bath and Body makes mini bath bombs for us. These are a heavy product. If you tried to ship these in bulk, it would be a nightmare. And it's almost impossible to ship different types of soap where if water touches them, then they are activated. So with the mini bath bombs or bath bombs that you go out to buy anywhere else, it's very difficult to buy them in a package-free way, because if they do get wet, then they are degrading and bubbling and everything else. So by partnering with a local business, I can pick these up. We have a system where we just reuse boxes. The bath bombs fill the boxes just completely in bulk. This is not something I would ever be able to get mailed to me in that fashion. And Jordan generally works with fragrance oils, but for us, we are like avoiding any ingredients that the environmental working group would not support. So she was happy. We sat down together. We came up with some blends that are just using plant oils and things that can degrade naturally and don't pose any sort of human health risk. So in this way, I was able to find something that actually did all the things that I needed it to do, which previously seemed impossible. Birch Babe is another amazing company. We have a lot of the same values. However, with refilleries, there can be the problem logistically of whatever the vessel that you get something in, getting it back to the company. So not having any sort of plastic waste at the end of it. And we source mouthwash from Birch Babe, and that's a liquid. It has to come in a plastic container. So by sourcing from a local company, I can pick it up on my way to work. I don't have to ship a heavy liquid product, and then I'm able to just return the packages and then they refill them for me to take next time. So it solves so many of my problems. Same thing with the bee spot. We wanted a local company that was producing beeswax, had apiaries of flower fields that our customers could go visit and actually see the connection and the process. And then they also are happy to offer us things package free. We just came up with some branding that goes in the store on that shelf. So these solved operational problems for me in a bunch of different ways, pricing wise and packaging wise, and they were able to tailor it to what I needed. So looking for local solutions can help you in more than just being able to be environmentally friendly. A waste audit is another thing that I will suggest. It's a great way, it's a really simple way to figure out where to start. So maybe you're like, have listened to the presentation so far and you have no idea where to start. It just feels so overwhelming. There's so many things, and people say that all the time, just even in their own lives, in their own homes. And the best way to figure it out, because we're all different and we're all doing different things, is to look at your waste. So this helps you gain some clarity on what you can tackle first. So I have a blog post that really breaks this down and how to do it. But really, it involves looking at your largest categories of waste and trying to tackle those. And then maybe you'll see that you have a really large category of waste, but it's not something you can approach right now, but you can take care of these 4 piles of different waste points to change things. That's also a really great place to start too. So looking at what your waste is, maybe even just learning about what recycling can actually happen in your area and making sure that you're following those guidelines so that you aren't contributing to recycling ending up in the landfill. That's a really great place to start as well. And this is just completely free to look at and do. And when you're looking at it, as I mentioned before, if you see like, hey, we have a whole bunch of these like styrofoam cups and it's going to cost us more to do this, then maybe you look at shifting a process somewhere and say, like, okay, we have to pay more money for the cup shift, but maybe in cleaning our cleaning products, we're going to shift that over to reusing the rags that we have from this process over here. So if you can do that when you're looking at your waste, and just trying to assess where to go next, that can be more affordable. And here's a little how to, but depending on the size of your business, there's actually businesses that can do some hard data collection. I would say this is something that you can save money on and do yourself, unless you need that data and you want to show like this year we had this, and then this year it was this. A lot of waste audit companies also don't provide you with understanding of what to actually do about it. They just give you the categories, and that can be something really simple for you to assess on your own as well. So you can dump it, sort it. You can also do this visually and just be mindful of it for a little while. Review solutions. Maybe it just looks like changing up what you have in place for recycling things in your space, or even just shifting like, hey, that shouldn't actually be in the garbage. This should be over here. And having like a clear process. Maybe it just needs signage for your staff, maybe a 15-minute chat about it. All of those things can kind of be sorted out with a waste audit and just takes a little bit of time. And then I thought I would give some examples of you look at your waste and you want to do something different with that waste. You have here's some great examples. So Bloom Salt Company reuses Kinsip's alcohol bottles from their distillery. So once they have hit the waste cycle, they do it's glass, but rather than having the whole production of recycling happening and needing to drop that off, Bloom Salt Company comes and picks those up, washes them, and is able to use them for their salt. This is great because it saves money for Kinsip and Bloom Salt. It's reusing something and it looks great. Lemon's Loot comes and picks up any of our packaging. So she's a small business and she does a lot of shipping. So we just let her know when we have a lot of it. We don't have to take any time to deal with any of our cardboard boxes in this way. Also, there's a number of free waste diversion programs. So if you check out TerraCycle, this is a website that does hard to manage waste. So a lot of municipal programs may not offer some recycling, but recycling programs may exist for those things. So for example, if you have an area where people throw their butts from smoking, or if you have a staff member that goes and collects those on your property, whatever sort of um, situation you have, if you have a lot of waste that comes from smoking, there's a completely free waste diversion program there. So you just have to have a spot where it's collected and then it gets dumped into a TerraCycle bin and gets shipped away for free to be dealt with properly. Same thing with Recork. We're part of this company and they take cork tops. If you were a restaurant, I'm sure you are dealing with a lot of cork waste. They take it, it costs nothing for you. You just have to sort it and it takes it away for you and you don't have to pay for that. I also have Skeleton Park Brewery on here. Lakeside Dog Biscuits is a small business that takes their spent grains for use in their dog biscuits. Skeleton Park doesn't have to deal with that now, and Lakeside doesn't have to purchase ingredients for that. And then a local women's shelter that we know of in Kingston has a large worm composter, and they put all of their shredding into there. So they're not paying for a company to dispose of that shredded paper waste after. It goes into the worm garden and is dealt with within a week. And then that worm garden, can give back to the gardens at the women's shelter that exists there for creating produce. This can also work for events. It's just a little bit of creative problem solving, but if you're a small business owner, you're absolutely used to doing that anyways. So finally, you can shift to some reusable, compostable, refillable options. So if you look at things that you are currently buying a lot of, is there an option that can just be reusable? I have a few examples on there, from shifting away from throwaway plastic gloves to just like a more heavy duty glove that could be worn. So my husband works at Bon Echo, and he's in charge of procurement for the maintenance department and shifting away from gloves that they throw away after every garbage clean. Each cleaner just has their own gloves, and that has significantly decreased waste and also the amount of money that they spend on that item. I have a bottle on there for like a refillable option. I have filters on there for shifting away from the Keurig cups. It's a huge waste problem. TerraCycle has a program for those K cups. And when you see the price of what it actually costs to deal with that waste properly, it really doesn't seem that convenient anymore. And if you shift to something like an unbleached filter, then that can be composted. You can use that for something else. And most people still know how to use a coffee maker with a filter anyways. You can shift away from offering plastic drink bottles to cans, to just decrease the amount of plastic waste that you have, because steel recycling is so much more successful than plastic recycling is. And the solutions are just going to vary depending on the size of your business, what you can do. But if you're able to shift things that you're frequently buying, slow it down a little bit and not have to buy them as much, that is a win financially as well for you. So I'll just show you quickly in the shop. We don't use any sort of paper towel. Our staff are used to a cleaning system where we use rags. So we talk about this, we've talked about it on our social media, but every time we have a new staff member come in, they are trained that when we're cleaning, we use rags or old cloths, and then we have a pegboard that they hang to dry on. They fall into that bucket, and then I do have to do laundry with this like once a week, but I haven't bought paper towel for several years, and that is a huge cost savings for me because I'm using something that already exists. So cleaning processes are a really easy thing to start with. If you can compartmentalize and do things in one area at a time, it's a lot easier to approach. And then I wanted to touch on a little bit, we're almost done, a little bit about sustainability messaging and branding considerations. So this is time consuming, but it is a lower cost with a higher return. So if I, as a consumer, am going to visit a new place, my mindset is very much set on this, and I'm looking for these types of things. So if I'm looking where to eat dinner or where I might want to stay somewhere or the different types of activities that I'm doing, there may be places that have great things in place, but if I can't see them, then it's difficult for me to choose that business if I have another choice that is going to offer me these things. So if you're able to make it clear to your consumers, it's going to be easier. So maybe you're sitting and thinking like, wow, this sounds like a lot of research, Ange. I have to do a lot of like upfront researching to figure out what I'm going to shift. There are people doing that just in their everyday lives all the time. So if you can make it clear for them and really obvious that, hey, you can bring your own cup. Hey, you can save money with this. We are refilling products in our Airbnb showers, anything like that. If you're able to tell your customers about it, it's a lot easier for them to make the choice to choose your business when they're coming at it with this value set. So generally, what I find, and this is especially true with something like clothing brands, if I'm trying to choose something, if there's nothing said on the topic on their website or their social media, I can generally assume that it's not part of their value system. So if you're able to clearly show some of the things that you're doing or changes that you've made, then it shows me that this is a value for your business and that's where I want to spend my money. So if you're able to plan something on your website or your social media, or having a space in, I don't know if you have a front lobby or a front desk, if you're able to put that information out there for customers to see, then this is where you're going to experience some of the returns of the work that you're putting in. And it can take time to implement the changes, but the value is there if you take the time to make it clear. So, to wrap things up, just some additional considerations. If you have in your head, like, oh, maybe I can shift this or this, remember that you may also have staff that have a lot of knowledge in just different types of changes, or maybe they come from different workplaces where things were done differently. So if you have staff knowledge in these areas, I would delegate some of this work. Or if you have somebody that's really passionate about it, it can add a lot of purpose to their job to be able to put some of these things in place. I find just personally how I work, if you have a policy or some sort of procedure that's really clear, and you figure that out before you try to make the change, then you can catch yourself in sort of any of the pitfalls that might come up, like the what about this or what happens when we do this. So involving your staff in it, I would highly recommend. And then alerting your customers, as I mentioned, designing some type of signage so that they know that they can bring their own mug. And there are a lot of people who want to do that, but there's definitely the social fear of being told no. It feels like a rejection. And we talk with people about that all the time, wanting to, for example, bring their own mug and ask. But if it's already there, then the next time they're like, oh, okay, I can do that. I'm going to come do that next time. And you'll have more traction with the things you're trying to do. I would suggest asking and polling your customers to collect data on if you have more than one option. And again, adopting a stepped approach. If you start with a waste audit and you identify some clear areas that you want to tackle and then figure out a timeline of when this can make sense for you, that really takes the overwhelm out of it. And we can also help with this. So you can reach out. We have started helping others with some solutions. If it's just something simple, I would love to point you in the right direction. And if you need help further, we have lots of resources on our blog. If you're like, hey, I want to clean, like shift some of our cleaning products, I have a lot of information on there of how you can do that. And our partnerships page has some more examples of how we've worked with other businesses in trying to shift some of their operations. But I have 3 takeaways, and then we can do some question and answers. But to go back to the beginning of the presentation, it's a mindset change. You have to look at decision making differently, and that takes some time. There's definitely going to be some backpedaling or sliding down the hill and then getting back to it. But having that sort of openness to knowing that this is sort of a long-term thing that you're going to be working on, and ultimately it's a mindset shift, it means you don't have to get it perfectly right at the very beginning and like right out the gate. So please don't feel overwhelmed. Again, love to help if you are feeling that. And you will, whatever business you're in, part of your demographic cares about sustainability and social justice, and the social factors are also intersecting with that environmentalism. So making these shifts should accommodate everyone, but it doesn't alienate anyone. So maybe you will have a big chunk of your demographic that doesn't care about this, but that doesn't push them away necessarily. It just means you're bringing in a larger group of people into what you're doing and accommodating the things that they're also trying to do. And then there are solutions that exist locally and within your individual business that may not cost you any money, and you can figure them out, and it may solve more than just sort of the eco sustainability piece of it, and also help you figure out some of your operations as well. So figuring out some time in your schedule to take to creatively like sit down and like maybe brainstorm solutions, it can make it affordable for you to do, and also solve some of those problems. So that's the end of my presentation. I can't believe that I ended right exactly where I wanted to be.
And you did great for having strep throat, can I just say?
Yes, I have
Incredible.
a mint tea, but it went really well. So, yeah, are there any questions?
Well, I just have to say how much I appreciate the passion with which you approach this topic and the examples, the local relevant types of examples. And I know that whether people are on the call today or watching later on our YouTube channel, the fact that other people are doing it is encouragement. And also that you on your website, and I dropped a link there in the Zoom chat, provide that kind of support for businesses who are just starting or who need a little help. I think is absolutely incredible. That's why I love this weekend community. Any questions before we wrap up today? I want to make sure to honor that if you have questions for Ange. You can drop them in the Zoom chat or you can go on off mute. Let us know. Plenty of food for thought there today. I did a whole bunch of notes right here. Thinking of
Yeah.
my grandparents, and you mentioned the grandparents. I'm like, yeah, if we could go back and just say, could you just write us a manual for 50 years from now? Because this is
Yeah.
what you're doing right now is what I need to be doing. Yeah, absolutely, I agree, Lori. There's a lot. It's great when we record these because we can go back and rewatch and catch the parts that maybe we need to delve into a little bit deeper. So,
Yeah, it's a lot of content. That's why I wanted to just make sure everybody could get the PDF and then you can
and I
come back.
did drop that in the Zoom chat for everyone as well today.
Great. There's a ton of questions on there if you're still feeling like not sure where to start. It can hopefully help create some like introspection for figuring out some areas of business to.
Absolutely. It's an excellent resource. Thanks so much for taking the time to do that. And so I'm just going to pause for 30 more seconds among us in case there's a question. If not, we wish you a fantastic day, a great Earth Day as well. And Ange, I want to thank you for shining a light on this, not just this month, but every month of the year. And so good luck as you continue with your business, but then also this broader message of creating more sustainable practices in our small businesses. It hit home today for sure. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you have a fantastic day. Thanks again, Ange. I appreciate your time. Have a happy Earth Day, everyone. Take care. Thank you.